Hi everybody, my name is Rebecca. Let's talk about makeup. This is the big one, y'all. Eyeshadow palettes. I have been both looking forward to and dreading this because, listen, I have 69 eyeshadow palettes. 69. Probably gonna have to split this up into a couple of parts. So this is a couple of, we've got to use another word other than parts. Chapter, volume, okay, volume sounds right. So this is part 5, volume 1. My eyeshadow palettes. Let's do it. Let's do this thing. Okay, I'm not going in specific order of anything. I just grabbed the palettes as they came off of my shelf. Some of them will be grouped together in brands simply because the size of the palettes is similar. So like Anastasia Beverly Hills, all those palettes are together. A lot of my ColourPop palettes are together, and a lot of my BH Cosmetics palettes are together, but I'm not going in any specific order just because I don't want to have to keep track of it. So let's start. The first one I have here, this is the Milani Soft and Sultry palette. I really like this palette. This is one of the earlier cool toned neutral palettes that was available. I don't even know if, I don't think Milani makes this anymore, but it was a gift from my husband. It was very sweet, and I really enjoy this palette. I do find the mattes to be a little bit powdery, and if you're trying to do anything more complex, I think that it can occasionally get a little bit muddy. But that being said, if you're just going for a basic everyday eye, which I think most people who are pulling for this palette, that's what they're doing, it's a really good one. Really enjoy this palette. I'm sad that they no longer make it. Here's one of the newer palettes in my collection. This is from Alter Ego. This is their Midsummer palette. It is a dupe for the Anastasia Nouveau palette, if I'm not mistaken. I think. I really like Alter Ego's palettes. I like their formulas. I know that a lot of people are annoyed with Alter Ego because they don't dupe things immediately. I do feel like that's a little bit more of an ethical way to dupe personally, because everybody who is going to spend money on the original product has already spent their money on it. So the audience that Alter Ego is reaching are the people who cannot or do not want to spend their money on the original palette. So in that way, they're really not cannibalizing any sales from the original creator of the original palette, because they're reaching a market who was not interested, because they had plenty of time to get the original one if they wanted it or were able to purchase it. I wanted to experiment with this color palette without, but I'm not sure, I wasn't sure how I felt about it. So I really didn't want to invest in the Anastasia palette, even though I do enjoy her formula most of the time. I like it. I've only used it just a handful of times, but so far I've really enjoyed it. I have not yet dipped into this purple. I know a lot of people thought that this was just really out of place, but I personally really like a neutral palette that has a pop of color, obviously. So yeah, so far I have enjoyed this. It is not gonna be a favorite, a year-end favorite or anything like that, but I do enjoy it and I like being able to reach for it. Next, I have 3 Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes. I'll start with my oldest. That is the Carly Bible and Anastasia palette. I really like this palette and I have used the heck out of it. I know I have no pan in any of the pans, but I really have used the heck out of it, especially this one. There is a decent sized dip going on in that one. Bible. This dusty mauve color, just that speaks to me. It's one of my favorite shades to put in my crease. I love shades that look like this. I pretty much love everything here with the exception of, I want to say this little quad of shades gets less use from me than the rest of the palette. But yeah, overall, I really enjoy it. I like the looks that come out of it. I find the color story is leaning neutral, but not just brown, if you know what I mean. The next one is another Anastasia collab, and this is the one with Jackie Aina, and I just love the deep, rich jewel tones in this palette. Just really, really love these. The quality is spectacular. It's one of the best that I've seen from Anastasia as far as I'm concerned. Really, really love it. I can't say a bad thing about this palette at all. I think probably Wiggly's is the one that gets the least use from me, simply because I don't wear a whole lot of red eyeshadow, especially red that's leaning toward the warmer side. But I really, really enjoy this palette. Glad to have it in my collection. This is probably my favorite Anastasia palette, if I'm honest. This is the Anastasia Norvina palette. It is just pretty. I know a lot of people look at this and they're like, oh, that's boring, but listen, it's just pretty. Every time I put this on my eyes, I feel pretty, and I just really enjoy the experience. So this is one of my absolute all-time favorite palettes from any creator. Next, I have a palette that is a little newer to me. This is the Mirage palette by Alter Ego. This is a dupe for Huda Beauty's Empowered palette, I believe. I have only used this a couple of times. It does lean a little bit warmer than I tend to like my neutral eyeshadows, but there are some really great shades in here. I really in particular like this quad over here. These two golds I do find are a little bit yellow for my personal taste, but I really like Cleopatra, which is down here, and also this shimmer Sirico up here. We get much warmer over here, but I have been able to make a few looks that I really, really enjoyed. I like the cream formula that they have here. I think Alter Ego did a really good job of imitating the formulas from Huda Beauty. And again, this is a color story that I wanted it to experiment with, but I could tell that a good bit of the palette was warmer than I was going to like. So I am definitely glad that I had the option to pick up the Alter Ego rather than continuing to side-eye the Huda Beauty palette every time I went to Sephora. Here's another Huda Beauty dupe from Alter Ego. This is the Coastal palette. I believe this is a dupe for Huda's Rose Quartz palette. This is a really pretty one. I've struggled a little bit with it, and I'm not sure why. I'm wondering if it's because there's not a whole lot of depth here. It's all very, very light, which may be a huge selling point for a lot of people. But I don't know. I feel like I've struggled to come up with looks that I've really enjoyed from this. I need to spend a little bit more time with it. I've probably only used it probably less than 10 times. So I do need to spend a little bit more time with it. Maybe put it in a no pan left behind to really get the full experience. No complaints about the formula. Here's one of my newer ones. I got this in the probably in, I think it was November of last year. Yes, gosh, it feels like it's like 2 months ago, but it feels like a lifetime, to be honest. This is the Huda Beauty Pretty Grunge palette. And listen, if there was me in a palette, if I was as a person represented in a palette, it would be this one. I love this color story. I just love it from the bottom of my heart. I can't tell you how thrilled I was to see just the proliferance of cool toned makeup that has been happening over the last year. And I really hope that the run of cool toned makeup is not done, because I have heard a lot of people talking about, oh, the peach fuzz color is the new color of the year from Pantone. Warm toned shades are coming back. And listen, if you are a warm toned shadow lover, you have the last 7 years of makeup releases to enjoy. You have all the oranges, all the reds, all the bright coppery golds that you could possibly want, okay? I only have a handful of these. So let me have my cool toned makeup. I'm really praying that 2024 is not the resurgence of orange eyeshadow. I want more of this. I would also really like to see more cool toned makeup that's not necessarily purple or pink. We're limited in our options there, I understand. And I think the Natasha Denona Xenon palette, the big one, was it Xenon? Was that what it was called? The one that was just black and white and shades of gray, in my opinion. I think that was an interesting addition to the cool palettes that we have been given over the last year, and I hope that that trend continues. Here is another one that I got between the Pretty Grunge, to be perfectly honest, between the Pretty Grunge and this one. This is what kind of, and also I got, well, you'll see a mini that I have later on. Between those three palettes, it kind of killed my need for the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude, because I was very, very tempted by that. But do you see this? This is so pretty. I love to mix slightly warm and slightly cool neutral tones together, and this is that palette. So between this, I have often put this one on my eyes and then made it a little bit more dramatic with this one, and that works out beautifully. I just don't know. There are a couple other palettes that I'm going to show you. I'm good as far as it comes to those very natural, easy, I need a nude type eyeshadows. So I don't think that's one. I may still purchase it in the future, but I certainly don't need it. And having these two in particular really helped me hold off on purchasing a very expensive palette from Natasha Denona. The next palette is one from ColourPop. This is the Troublemaker palette. This is one I actually thought I would like a lot more than I do. I'm not sure. I think it's the lid shades. I think it's the very, very cool steely lid shades that I have, which is not, to be perfectly honest, Silver Shadow is not my favorite. I don't think it's super flattering on me. It's a little icier and cooler than I think is, you know, appropriate for my skin tone. Your mileage may vary. I haven't loved the looks that have come out of this, but I have been able to pull together a few looks combining this palette with another palette that has some warmer lid shades, and I have liked that. But that in general is not how I do my makeup, so I have considered passing this one on. So I would consider this palette to be a little bit on the chopping block for me. I've got another Alter Ego palette. This is the Sakura palette from Alter Ego. I got this at the end of last year and used it once. This is another situation where I was intrigued by this color story. I really do like the combination of green and pink. And this is an interesting interpretation of green and pink, and I wanted to experiment with it, but I sure didn't want to pay the Natasha Denona MIDI palette price tag. So I grabbed it from Alter Ego during a sale, and I'm happy to have it in my collection. Need to play with it a little bit more just to really know exactly how I feel about it. Two more from Alter Ego. I got these at the beginning, I think, of last year. This is Shadow Kiss and Harmony. Shadow Kiss is the dupe, I think, for Natasha Denona's Glam palette. Really, really enjoy this one. Really solid. I feel like it's very similar to my Milani Soft and Sultry. I feel like they are very much along the same lines, but I do enjoy the quality of these shadows a little bit better. The Harmony palette, I believe this is the dupe for Natasha Denona's retro palette. Gosh, I can't remember. I think that's right. You can correct me in the comments if you'd like to. Really pretty palette. I like these tones a lot. I do find it a little bit repetitive. I'm glad that I didn't buy the Natasha Denona version of this, because I do feel like a lot of the looks that come out of this palette for me look very similar, which is not necessarily a bad thing because I like the look that comes out of it, but they're all very similar. Here is probably the palette that surprised me the most in 2023. This was the Jewels and Gems palette by Odin's Eye. I had only owned one palette by Odin's Eye prior to this, and that was the Hella palette that Angelica Nyqvist did with Odin's Eye. I actually still have the plastic on this one. I really was attracted to these dusty, kind of murky colors that they have in here, but what really, really surprised me were the shimmers. The shimmers are gorgeous, but they're not just gorgeous, they are incredibly unusual. There was just an enormous amount of creativity that went into not just the individual shades, and there's some sophistication in the in these shades. These are not primary colors, and they're not ones that I have a lot of repeats of throughout my collection. They're very nuanced colors, but the color palette in general is also incredibly creative, and I was surprised by the unusual combinations of colors I was able to come up with this palette, and how much I loved them, but wouldn't have thought to put them together had they not been in this palette together. Just every time I put this on my eyes, I get a little bit of a surprise, and I can't tell you how thrilling that is for me, especially with a collection as large as I have and as much eyeshadow as I've used over the course of my life. However, the number of eyeshadow looks that I have done, to still be able to open a palette and just be surprised by what happens is just, it's thrilling. And I just adore this palette for doing that for me. Next, I have 3 Natasha Denona. These are 3 Pat McGrath. This is Pat McGrath Labs. 3 of her 6-pan shadows. These were for limited edition collections that she had. The first one that I picked up, this was my first Pat McGrath eyeshadow experience, and this was the Bridgerton collection. I picked this up at TJ Maxx for a song, and I fell in love with her eyeshadows. I really, really enjoyed the experience of wearing these. I found similar to the Odin's Eye, I found the colors to be interesting and sophisticated. I really, really enjoyed the formulas. This one right here, I know people dislike how dry her special shades are, but I really, really enjoy the finish of them. My favorite thing, however, that I have discovered is Pat McGrath's mattes. I really, really enjoy her mattes. This whole color story is incredibly unusual and creative to me, and I really enjoy that. So after enjoying that one so much, I picked up which one? My next acquisition from Pat McGrath was Mothership Iconic Infatuation. And this color story just speaks to me. I know that's one that recurs over and over in Pat McGrath's collection, but as this was my second Pat McGrath experience, that wasn't a problem for me. These colors just really, really speak to me, and I just can't tell you how pretty I feel every time I put it on my eyes. I just do. Every combination of these shadows, yes, do they all the looks look roughly the same. There's a lot of similarity in all the looks that I can get out of this palette, but they all look good on me, and I feel pretty in all of them. So I go into this palette when I just need something easy, and I can't go wrong. I cannot go wrong with this little palette here. Just love it. Love it so much. From the same collection, but I picked this up significantly later when she was having a big 30% off sale on her site. I picked up the Velvet Liaison. At this point, I had Riel it's from the same collection. It's called Velvet Liaison, and they're all mattes. And at this point, I had realized that I was really enamored with Pat McGrath's mattes. The thing that I love so much about her mattes is that I can take this and turn this into transition shade. If with a light hand, and I've heard from some people that a natural bristle brush can help out if you're having trouble with Pat McGrath's mattes, although I do think her formula has improved in blendability over the years, based on what I have heard people say about her earlier Mothership palettes versus the newer ones. I can take the deepest shades she has in her palettes and blow them out to the most sheer, soft, light wash of color, or I can build it up to pretty much full opacity to get the same color you see in the pan here. And the versatility of that formula just thrills me. I love the fact that I could make an entire eye look with just this shadow. Just this shadow. It would look like I had 2 or 3 shadows on my eyes, but it would be just this one. I'm gonna have to do a demo of that one of these days. I don't love putting my makeup on camera, but I'm gonna have to try that one of these days and show you how that works out for those of you who are curious. But I really enjoy her matte formula, and I'm happy to have this in my collection. To be perfectly honest, I'm also happy that I didn't have to pay full price for this, because while I do really enjoy Pat McGrath full full price for Pat McGrath just seems insane to me. She also runs sales often enough that I don't think it would be smart to buy her full price. Speaking of Pat McGrath, this is Alter Ego's dupe of her, I think it's the Divine Rose 1. And it's the primary reason why I have never bought Divine Rose 1 or Divine Rose 2 is I love this palette. I have used the heck out of it. You can tell by how dirty it is. I really do like keeping my palettes clean, but you use something enough and it's going to get a little messy. I really, really, really love this palette. I think Alter Ego did a good job of imitating her special shades. They're not exactly the same as what you're gonna find in a Pat McGrath palette, but there's something about that subtle, I don't know, it's like it's subtle and impactful at the same time. You know that sparkly filter that Pat McGrath likes to put over her ads? I know a lot of people find it really annoying, and it's true, it does kind of obscure the reality of the products that she's advertising, but she likes to put that sparkly filter. I feel like her special shades are that sparkly filter, like on my eyelids, and I really enjoy it. This whole color story really speaks to me. I love the shift in this pan here. It's a pretty subtle shift, but I really enjoy it. I have learned that I don't love a really, really strong duochrome. I like my eyeshadow to be the color that I intended it to be when I put it on. This one has a little bit of a shift as well. It's a very subtle one, but it's very pretty. I like this whole palette, and as long as I have this, I just don't have the need for Pat McGrath's Divine Rose. Next, I have the Barbie and ColourPop palette. To be perfectly honest, I've only used this like maybe 3 times. I have had it for quite a while in my collection, and this is very, very much a summer palette for me, and I was so busy moving last summer that I didn't have a lot of time to experiment with new makeup. So this is one that I definitely needed to use a little bit more to figure out what my thoughts are. I did not actually use this for my inside corner. That's a different palette, but that would have been a good one to reach for. I really like the combination of these types of blues and these types of pinks. I think that's really, really pretty. I also like a good orange-blue combo. I'm gonna have fun with this in the summer. Next, I have the ColourPop Lush Life palette. This is a bit of an older one, but look at those colors. Oh my goodness. I did a lot of experimentation with color, not last year, but the year before, and I acquired a lot of very colorful palettes, a lot of them from ColourPop and BH Cosmetics, because again, this was an experiment. I wasn't gonna like dump a bunch of money on something more expensive. Like, listen, I love the indie palettes, the couple of indie palettes that I own, and I would love to own more, but in particular, the Cold Moon palette that recently came out by Ensley Rain. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That palette just speaks to my soul, but it is $77. $77. That's how much I paid for one of the Pat McGrath motherships that I had. And I felt a little bit not okay about that. I don't know. I just don't know if I can pay. I don't know if I can pay that much for the type of eyeshadows that are very much experimental. What they do is they scratch the itch for me of, I want this every once in a while. I feel better about paying higher prices for something I know I'm going to reach for again and again and again and again. Something that is more of a daily based use than something like this. I've only used this a handful of times. It is gorgeous, don't get me wrong, but I'm not wearing this level of color on my eyes every single day. So I prefer getting my experimental shades, like my multi-chromes and my duochromes and my colorful shimmers in a more inexpensive format like this, because I'm just not going to be reaching for this type of thing every day. That said, this is lovely. The formula is beautiful. This is an older palette. I got it for almost nothing, I think, after it was discontinued. But it's still going strong, still beautiful, applies beautifully, very true to color, gorgeous palette. Here's another one that I have. This is on the older side. This is the, obviously, it's the Kathleen Lights and ColourPop collab Dream Street. I really enjoy this peachy with a little pop of turquoise and coral color story. I think this is just really pretty. It's easy to get a very neutral look, very easy, soft, neutral look. And then if you want to just be a little fun that day, just a little pop of color, like in the inside corner or underneath the lash line, just super pretty palette. That said, this one is pretty old, and I do feel like the performance of the shadows is starting to change a little bit and not be quite as easy to use. So this is probably one that's gonna have to leave my collection sometime soon. Here's another one from ColourPop that I bought that I was just enchanted by this color story. This is the Boudoir Noir. Look at this kind of grungy. This is warm, yes, but it's not like in your face, coral, bright orange warm. I love the olive tones, the grunginess of this bronze here. I love the nuance in these colors. And I think this was a really well put together palette. Really enjoy this one. I don't even mind, to be perfectly honest, I don't even mind the pressed glitter. I don't wear pressed glitters very often, but it can be fun every once in a while. I bought this at the same time as the Boudoir Noir. This is the Menage a Moi by ColourPop. And the mirror came shattered, so I actually pressed some sticker paper over it so that to keep it intact. But like, look at that. Look at that deliciousness. Is that not, I want to eat it. It's just so pretty and it just looks yummy. It looks like raspberry yogurt to me, you know, it looks like a dessert or something. I just really love this particular color story, and you're going to see that represented over and over in my collection. I've really enjoyed this particular palette. I don't even mind the pressed glitters. I don't wear them very often, but you know, they have a time and a place. Really pretty shades, nice, creamy, very foiled shimmer shades. I just really like this one. Do I have this color story or something very similar? Yes, several times, but I don't mind. I don't mind having multiples of this type of color story. I just really enjoy these kind of muted, sort of slightly dusty, washed out berry tones. Really enjoy it. It's a good palette. Here are here's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, palette in my collection. This is the Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette. I remember wanting this so bad. I got it for half off, I think, toward the end of its run at Ulta, and still smells like chocolate. I do think the performance of these shadows has started to decline a little bit, but to be perfectly honest, from the beginning, they weren't, I don't know. The formula doesn't impress me. I like this color story, I really do. I have enjoyed this color story, but the formula is not my favorite. Even before the performance started to decline, I did find that these don't layer super well. It's very difficult to build up depth. If you are layering more than a couple of shades, it all starts to get a little bit muddy and blend together. And the colors just never really gave me what I wanted from them. I think my very favorite shade in the whole palette is this one right here. It's called Amaretto. It's just this really interesting, it's like a rich, cool brown with a purple shimmer in it. And I really like that. I don't have anything else exactly like that, and I think that shade right there is the reason why I have hung on to this as long as I have, because I haven't enjoyed an entire look I've gotten out of this palette for a long time. Also, they hard panned really easily. I think that I probably am going to have to get rid of this soon. I actually really enjoyed Marzipan as well. It's another shade I like. That's the thing, okay? I really like the individual shades in this. It's just so creamy and lovely and soft and pretty. I really love that. I like the individual shades, but when I put them together, they turn into a muddy mess on my lid. And I think that's probably down to how I prefer to do my eyeshadow looks. I like to do a lot of layering. I like to use probably a minimum of 3 or 4 colors. And I like a lot of contrast and depth. And I like a lot of color complexity. I like slightly more complex eyeshadow looks. I think if you're just going for a couple of colors, you just want a light wash, you just want something soft and pretty in just a color in the crease and another one in the outer corner or on the lid, I think you wouldn't be disappointed by this, but that's just not how I do my makeup. So I think I'm probably gonna pop out a few of these and keep them as single shadows. I probably shouldn't because I don't use single shadows a whole lot, but I really do believe that this color and this color are the ones that have kept me from getting rid of this sooner. It needs to leave my collection, but I just don't know if I can part with this in particular until I can find a dupe for it. If you know a dupe for Amaretto from the Too Faced Chocolate Bar Palette, please let me know. But yeah, I think that one's long for my collection. My second Too Faced palette, this is significantly newer. I got this on, I think I got this from TJ Maxx after it was discontinued. I don't think they make this anymore, do they? I'm not quite sure. I was disappointed enough with the Too Faced Chocolate Bar Palette, and to be perfectly honest, this one that I really haven't kept up on what Too Faced is selling and not selling I really haven't kept up on what Too Faced is selling and not selling. I love this color story. I love it. I love the neutrals, little pop of peach and green. There's a little bit of purple in the corner. I just really, really love this color story. However, love the way it smells too. However, again, I just don't think it suits the way I prefer to do my makeup. I don't think that the colors layer together particularly well. You get too many colors on the lid. They don't differentiate themselves enough on the lid, and they all kind of turn a little bit muddy if you introduce too many colors. And they don't layer great. I don't know. Again, if you're just doing something simple and light and pretty, just a couple of shades, maybe even just one all over the shade, and that's kind of the way you like to do your makeup, I don't think you'd be disappointed with this. I think I'm gonna pass this on to a friend of mine that I think will enjoy it more than I have, because that is kind of the way she prefers to do her eyeshadow. Here's a surprising one. I'm surprised at how long this one's been in my collection. This is the W7 Socialite palette. This is a dupe for the Huda Beauty, the New Nudes, is that what it was called? This is a really surprisingly good palette. I think it cost, I don't know, $5 or something stupid like that. I don't know if you can get your hands on it anymore, but the quality of this palette was actually rather surprising. I enjoy the mattes. They're creamy, they're blendable, they're easy to use. The shimmers are actually pretty impressive. I've never had the New Nudes palette, so I don't know exactly how dead on the dupes are formula wise, but they are creamy and foiled and lovely. I do find that I struggle a little bit to get these foiled shades on a brush, and I've gotten around that a couple of ways. I either apply it with my finger, or Morphe sells a little brush. I can't remember exactly what it's called now, but it's got a silicone tip. It's a little spatula tip type thing, and I think it's perfect for getting these very kind of squishy, soft, almost cream shimmers on the eye. It's got a couple of pressed glitters that I don't care for, have never used, but the rest of the palette, I've used every single shade, even the cream shade here. I've had this palette for quite a while, and it is still going strong. Really, really lovely palette. And you know that I love this color story. The next one on my list is one from Huda Beauty. I got this toward the beginning of last year. Is that when it was released? I think it was close to the release of this one. That's just me. I mean, I think watching me go through all of my palettes, you can tell that this is something that I'm gonna really, really enjoy. There is a shade in here, I can't remember which one it is right now. I think that the choice of which shades were going to be the cream formula was a little bit odd. I would have preferred that this was one of the cream formulas. There is a shade in here that doesn't look anything doesn't look anything on the eyes the way it looks in the pan. All of this looks very cool. There is a shade in here that reads incredibly warm once you get it on the eyes. And I don't like being surprised. I like being able to look at the pan and more or less tell what kind of color is going to end up on my eyes. And I do find that Huda Beauty, in my experience with her eyeshadows, does that fairly often. Sometimes you just don't know what you're gonna get. I can't actually remember which shade it is now. That surprised me. But that is the only con to this palette. I have really, really enjoyed that. I have come to really love an all matte look, and I do combine this with shimmers from other palettes sometimes, but I also really like this just on its own. Here's the Wild Child palette by ColourPop. This one is a very pretty palette. I really, this is a pretty warm palette for me, but I have enjoyed it. I think the thing that I enjoy the most about this palette is this top row. I love these deep browns that are very cool. These are very cool deep browns, almost purpley, okay? And that is actually pretty unusual. I haven't run into a lot of shades like that in general, and I think that there's only one other palette that I have in my collection that has those very cool, almost purpley browns. I think though this top row is the reason I've kept this palette around so long, as I haven't gotten as much use out of the rest of this here. I think this is something I could see myself passing on in the future, but I have not yet decided to part with it. I really, really like those cool chocolatey browns up here. Very pretty. Overall, I do feel like the palette is a little bit on the dark side for me, so it does end up being more of a companion palette than one that I'm going to go in and get an entire eye look from. I actually think this one might be the oldest. I said that the chocolate bar palette was the oldest, but this one might be the oldest. This is my Tartist Pro To Go palette from Tarte. Look at this cutie. I just really... This is a great little palette. I don't know that I have been hugely impressed over the years by Tarte's eyeshadow quality, but these are really, really nice. This is a lovely, lovely foiled gold shade. Let's see, I'm gonna swatch that for you. This is an older palette too, but it is still performing really well. And I love these rich metallics. Love this little berry shade here. Look at that. Just so pretty. And these neutrals here are just right up my alley. I wouldn't call these are a little bit, this one's a little bit on the cool side, I would say, but I would say that this is a very, very neutral. This is a very neutral palette, but the formula is lovely to work with. I have been considering joining the fun-sized palette project that the Fantastic Ladies are doing with this particular one, and I will let you know. I'll update you on how that goes. Here's another little palette. I really do like little palettes. This is the BH Cosmetics Nude Ego Unleashed Blushing Palette. I was a little, ooh, this one got a little messy. This is a very flaky shade up here. I was a little surprised at how much I like this because it's just a lot of pink. That's a lot of pink. I mean, I do like a mauvey kind of berry color, but this reads pretty pink on the eyes. However, I think I picked this up at TJ Maxx for like $3, $4, something like that. And I just, every time I wear it, it's just pretty. There's nothing really unique or interesting about the color story when you look at it in the palette, but when I wear it, I just feel pretty. And isn't that why we have makeup? Isn't that why we put makeup on us, so we can feel pretty? I like this one. Here's another little one. This is the Naked Urban Decay Wild West. I think I've used this once. I love the idea, similar to Dream Street, I love the idea of the very neutral color palette with a pop of turquoise. And knowing that this one has to leave my collection, I've hung on to this one, but I just haven't gotten around to using it. I guess I'm a little bit nervous because I remember liking the Urban Decay formula once upon a time, but I do think that the way that I have way that my makeup tastes have evolved but I think my makeup tastes and the way I prefer to put my makeup on has evolved a little bit, and my exposure to really, really great formulas. I mean, over the years, formulas have really become really, really good, and very, very good formulas have become very accessible in a way that they never were 10, 15 years ago. So I really need to play around with this one a little bit more and see what I think. I do like the color story. Here is another one from ColourPop. This is the Or Kid You Not. This is like the dramatic version of Menage a Moi. So this is soft, pretty, demure, bam, drama. I really, really like this. This is a great palette, good quality, and I love my purples, so love that one. This one I have mostly just for the branding, for the packaging. The child palette, this is really cute. This is a lovely little color story. I don't wear a ton of green, and usually when I do wear green, I am reaching for another palette that I'll show you soon. But I hang on to it because of Grogu. I have to admit. I do like the palette. The few times that I have worn it, I have enjoyed it. It's a good palette. They're great colors. But I don't wear green a ton. And I have other greens in my collection that I like better, but I'm probably never going to get rid of it because big fan. Big fan. Here's another interesting one, and one I don't think I have used enough. This is a very deep, dramatic palette, and it's a little harder to use for me. This is the Baroque palette by ColourPop. The fact that the only option I have for transition shade is straight up gray, I struggle with that. This is a very cool tone palette. I actually think I struggle with this one in the same way that I struggled with the ColourPop. Let me see. I talked about this one in the last video and how much I felt like I should like it. The Troublemaker palette by ColourPop. I feel like the times that I've done my eyes with this one is just a little bit too cool for me. I do like a cool tone palette, and I'm glad that we have so much more by way of cool toned options on the market, but I found that if it's too cool, I feel a little, I don't know, I don't think it's flattering for a look on my skin tone to be completely gray and gray blue. So I want to play with this a little bit more. I'm going to have to combine it with something a little bit warmer to see if I can get some looks that I enjoy a little bit more than what I've got out of it so far. In general, I'm not one that uses a lot of companion palettes. I don't tend to mix and match my palettes a whole lot, but I think I might want to try doing that in order to get some more use out of palettes that I do enjoy, but just are missing a little something, you know? I don't want to write it off completely just because it doesn't have a transition shade that I want to use, or to write off Troublemaker because it doesn't have any lid shimmers that I am interested in. You know what I'm saying? I want to get use out of these without having to wear looks that I don't enjoy. So next I have this one by Butter London. It is called the Teddy Boy palette. Now I got this in a BoxyCharm many years ago. Is a very neutral palette with some blue gray colors. This is a very cool toned palette, and I got this well before, I think when I got this we were still riding the wave of the very, very warm eyeshadow colors that were more popular from 2016 through, honestly, through 2022. I really feel like 2023 is the first time we really started to see a lot of offerings that were more cool in tone, and so I hung on to this for quite a while. Even though I don't love the formula. I find the formula is a little dry, it's a little stiff, it's a little hard to get to the level of opacity that I like. It's not my favorite, and I could see it leaving my collection. I've just hung on to it all this time because I felt like I didn't have enough good cool toned options, but clearly looking at my collection, that has changed. So this may not be with me for very much longer. I think we're going to call it there. That is going to be volume 1 of my eyeshadow palettes. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope this has been interesting for you or entertaining in some way. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.